Hey, welcome to today's Sustainability Series webinar, Canadian Centre for Food Integrity 2002, Public Trust Research, Alberta's Emerging Issues and Trends Over Time. First, I acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional territory of the signatories to Treaty 6, 7, and 8. I acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who have a deep connection with this land. My name is Carrie Ann Kohler-Monroe, and I'm an environmental program specialist in the Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation. The Sustainability Series webinars are hosted by the Natural Resource Management Branch and are designed to address agriculture industry's approach and initiatives on sustainability. During the presentation, if you'd like to post questions in the question and answer box, they'll be answered by the presenter at the end of the session. Again, I thank you for joining today, and I'll pass it over to my colleague, Laura Ang, to introduce the work we do with CCFI, as well as our presenter. Laura.
Great. Thank you very much, Carrie Ann. And thanks to the Sustainability Series team for supporting us in getting this public trust research outreach completed. And I'd also like to thank all of you and our attendees for committing your valuable time and joining us in this webinar today. I'd like to just do a brief background, and then I'll introduce our speaker. So Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation is an inaugural member of the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity since 2016. And in that, we also supported a boost to Alberta respondents in their annual public trust research. And we've supported this boost every 2 years. So 2022 marks our 4th year with a really solid understanding of where Albertans are at with their perspectives of the Canadian food system. If you are interested in some of this history, please contact me. I will pop my contact information into the chat box. And then if you're actually interested in some of the public trust program opportunities, I would invite you to contact Naomi Carter. She's our new public trust program specialist, and perhaps she'll put her information in the chat box for you as well. But getting on to our speaker for today, Ashley Bruner. The long-term success and growth of Canada's food system must be grounded in public trust. Over the past 4 years with CCFI, Ashley has helped food system stakeholders like us understand and build trust with Canadians on food system issues, both big and small. As the research coordinator at the Centre for Food Integrity, Ashley specializes in communicating public opinion research to the food system. Ashley has over 10 years of research, presentation, and policy experience. She has worked on hundreds of research projects for clients in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. Ashley's experience managing the full lifespan of a wide range of research methodologies, ranging from online, telephone, focus group, in-depth interviews, and town halls. And what I appreciate about Ashley is that she translates numbers and trends over time into actionable insights to help Canada's food system better connect with Canadians on issues that they care about. With an eye for detail and passion for the food system, Ashley tells the story behind every data point. So let's hear Alberta's story around public trust for the 2022 research. Off to you, Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It's a pleasure to be here, even remotely. So we'll get underway right away. We've got a lot of information and time at the end for discussion. And like Laura, I'm always available. My email will be at the end to chat research or any additional questions. So just a quick reminder of who we are at CCFI and what we do. The Canadian Centre for Food Integrity is a national nonprofit organization with charitable status. Our mission is to build public trust in Canada's food system by leading through transparent two-way communication, resources, and research. When it comes to research, we act as a collaborative coordinating body that seeks to inform research-based public trust efforts. The Canadian Centre for Food Integrity's annual National Public Trust Research, which we'll be talking about today, is pretty unique in that it's both consistent yet adaptable. So we have some core tracking questions that provide a long-term understanding of public perceptions over time, as well as context for emerging food system issues and trends. Along with the commitment to those core key tracking questions, CCFI is also very proactive in addressing new and emerging issues through new research areas and analysis. So we'll get right into it to our 2022 Public Trust Research results. The 2022 Public Trust Research was conducted online from July 4th to 25th through Ipsos Public Affairs. A representative sample of 2,918 Canadians aged 18 plus were surveyed. Quotas and weighting were employed to ensure that the sample's population reflects the overall Canadian population according to census information. Our base size is very large, close to 3,000 people. Typical national surveys are around 1,000 people. But our commitment to that large base size allows for provincial representation, as well as a great credibility interval of plus or minus 2.1 percentage points 19 times out of 20 had all Canadians been polled. Like Laura said, this past year, we also boosted Alberta's sample to a base size of 600 respondents to allow for a more reliable understanding of provincial trends and concerns. The majority of the data being presented today is among Albertans, and that sample is representative of the provincial population. Again, the government of Alberta has been an incredible leader when it comes to research-based public trust efforts, and we just like to thank everyone there for continuing to invest in this important research. Overall, the objectives of last year's study were to track public perceptions about Canadian food, agriculture, and food system issues, to measure public trust in Canadian food and agriculture, as well as specific food system stakeholders, to explore consumer attitudes and behaviors on important topics. This year, we fielded a suite of questions acting as a deep dive on cost of food, sustainability, food labeling, and plant and animal genetics, and we'll see all of that today. And we also sought to better understand key drivers of public trust. So this year, our study ran an advanced analysis exploring the relationship between sustainability-related issues and their impact on growing public trust. And here we have just the respondent profile, both the Alberta proportion, gender, age, marital status, compared to the Canadian population. Again, this deck is also kind of a reference deck for you all today, so just for your reference going forward. So now to get into the research itself, we'll start off kind of setting the table with a bit of a big picture context question or life issues question. Every year, we ask Albertans to rate their level of concern on a wide range of life and food system issues. This year, we looked at nearly 20 different topics. The results of this question provide both an important big picture understanding of those key issues for Albertans at that moment, as well as a point of reference for where food and farm concerns fall in comparison to that. So, what are Albertans worried about? Overall, people within Alberta are extremely concerned about pocketbook issues. Inflation is the top-rated consumer concern, with 7 in 10 saying they're very concerned about this issue. This level of concern is also significantly higher compared to the national average, which was 66%, and inflation was ranked second among Canadians overall, whereas it's first here within Alberta. Concern about the cost of food is ranked second in Alberta, and that's increased a significant year over year, an 8-point jump from 59% in 2021. And when we look back to 2022, we see an even greater shift, a 15-point jump. And there was a tracking low in terms of concern about cost of food back in 2020 at 52%. In rounding out these top 5 concerns, we see that 2/3 of Albertans are very concerned about the cost of energy, and this level of concern has also grown significantly year over year and is higher than Canadians overall. Rounding out the top 5 consumer concerns, over half are worried about the economy and keeping healthy food affordable. Both of these issues are comparable to previous waves and the national average. When it comes to demographics and who's worried about what, We found that Albertans aged 35 and older are significantly more concerned about these top 5 issues compared to the younger cohort. Not many gender differences aside from cost of food, in which women are more worried about this compared to men. So moving on to some questions that have to do with consumer perceptions related to food production. First is the perceived direction of the food system. It's one of our core tracking questions, and every year we ask, overall, would you say that the food system in Canada, including how food is grown, produced, and sold, is moving in the right direction or wrong direction? And here we have both the provincial and national results. We see that a third of Albertans feel the food system is headed in the right direction, which is comparable to previous waves, as well as the national average. Unlike Alberta, where perceptions have remained steady, there was a significant national decrease in those who feel that things are headed in the right direction, and an increase in those who think the food system is headed in the wrong direction. So even though your provincial numbers are similar to the national average, the situation is a bit better, at least to the point where it's consistent year over year compared to a significant decrease nationally. And especially compared to that tracking high in 2020, which we call the COVID boost. We see in 2020 across nearly all other metrics, scores were kind of off the charts. And this was in response to consumer perceptions related to the pandemic, feeling happy and positive about the food system's response to the pandemic and ensuring Canadians would have access to safe and healthy food. So this question, although is quite simple and straightforward, it's a very good litmus test on how people are feeling about food and agriculture overall. Our research shows that those who feel things are headed in the right direction, so just a high level sense that things are going well, are significantly more positive about all other ag and food system issues. So knowing this, we ask a follow-up open-ended question to try to understand what those underlying perceptions are that drive positive or negative views about the food system. Among the third of Albertans who feel the food system is headed in the right direction, the food system's regulations and standards, as well as commitment to continuous improvements, are the main drivers cited. So when it comes to any individual food topic, whether it being animal welfare, sustainability, affordability, be sure to highlight the standards and those continuous improvements to help improve public perceptions. When it comes to the 22% of Albertans who feel the food system is headed in the wrong direction, you'll see that the overwhelmingly top number one reason cited for a negative opinion is cost. While rated far lower, we see secondary concerns related to not enough support for farmers and producers, or kind of a negative perception of government and politics. Now, moving on to some more of our specific food system issues that we track every year. In 2022, we fielded close to, I think, 20 of these issues, but for the sake of time, I've just picked out some of those core issues that have changed significantly compared to last year within Alberta. So in terms of where things have increased, we see a very large 12-point jump in consumer concern about food loss and waste in Canada. We also found an improvement when it comes to animal welfare, with significantly more Albertans feeling that their meat, milk, and eggs are derived from humanely treated animals compared to 2021. That was a 9-point increase year over year, which in the end has resulted in a tracking high in 2022 for this metric. After a tracking low in 2021, concern about the use of antibiotics in farm animals is up 11 points, with a third of Albertans saying that they're very concerned about this issue. Yet, despite this increase, that concern level still falls well below the more historic levels of around 38% we saw in 2019 and 2017 when we fielded it. So it's still not a historic high despite an increase year over year. So these were kind of the three core shifts provincially year over year. And just a note about statistic differences, like Laura mentioned, every other year Alberta has been boosting their sample. So when we compare year over year, 2021 had a bit of a reduced base size, so it does take a little bit more of a shift for it to be significant when comparing those 2 years. So when we see something that is shifted compared to 2021, it's quite significant and important to take note of. So that's within the province, and now we'll look at how Alberta results differ compared to the Canadian population overall. So compared to the national average, that's that green bar underneath the blue, which is Alberta, we see that Albertans are far more likely to feel that farmers are good stewards of the environment. We see a pretty impressive 14-point gap between Albertan perceptions compared to the national average. Albertans are also more likely than the average Canadian to agree that farm animals should be given antibiotics when sick. Although concern about food loss and waste and the use of antibiotics has increased within the province, we saw in that previous slide, these level of concerns are still significantly below the national average, as is concern about the use of pesticides and hormones within food production. Like I said, there are many more food production issues we track year over year. It can be found in our report or reach out to me. And I can provide some more information, but these were just the ones of note when it comes to annual provincial change as well as uniqueness compared to the national average. Now we'll move on to public trust, who has it, and what are the threats to maintaining a reliable, trusted system. Within Alberta, trust in the food and agriculture system and its stakeholders is pretty consistent compared to last year. Farmers are the most trusted group, which is the same for Canadians overall, followed by scientists and small independent producers. Like I said, trust levels are pretty steady, except for restaurants at the bottom there. We saw a significant decrease, a 9-point drop in trust in restaurants. Compared to the national average, trust levels are significantly lower within Alberta towards Canada's food system overall, grocery stores, restaurants, government agencies, and politicians. On the side here, we've added just a bit of demographic information, again, for your reference moving forward, if anyone's going to rewatch this as a fun activity tonight. And we see that trust does not differ significantly by gender, but there are some differences by age group. So we see younger Albertans being more trusting towards scientists, grocery stores, food manufacturers, and politicians. We first began tracking trust in this way, that previous slide, in 2019, and these are the two areas that have declined significantly compared to that benchmark level a few years ago within Alberta. So trust in Canadian agriculture overall, as well as the food system overall, has decreased by 8 and 9 points respectively. Trust in agriculture has been and remains higher compared to the food system. As mentioned, that 2020 was very much a high watermark when it comes to public opinion related to food and agriculture issues. So even on this slide, you see that 2020 was the highest overall. But now on this next slide, we'll take a look at a few stakeholders who had significant decreases in public trust compared to that 2020 COVID boost. So a number of groups. We see overall trust towards farmers, university researchers, grocery stores, food processors, restaurants, government agencies have all decreased significantly compared to that COVID bump, but not low lows. So it's not we haven't maintained that level of trust we saw in 2020, and it's been a bit of a slow trickling off the past couple of years. So next year will be pretty interesting to see if we see a rebound or kind of a leveling off like we've seen the past couple of years. So along with measuring trust towards food and agriculture system stakeholders, we also measure trust in various media sources when it comes to information about food. We found that most Albertans feel neutrally towards media when it comes to information about food. Most are in that middle bar there. Government websites, online searches, and print media have the highest levels of trust, and yet there's also a sizable proportion who find these mediums not at all trustworthy, that gray bar there. Compared to Canadians overall, trust within Alberta is significantly lower when it comes to government websites, company websites, TV, Instagram, and Facebook. Again, a bit of demographic information where applicable. We see that the 18 to 34-year-old cohort is a bit more trusting of nearly all information sources, particularly that lower third. So looking at podcasts, Reddit, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, but not Facebook, because Facebook, I guess, is for my parents' generation now, and it's not cool among younger people. And I still use Facebook, so I don't know what that says about me. So looking at this slide, our communications manager, she finds these results a bit depressing, but we've learned that it's the messenger, not the medium, that's important. So depending on who your target audience is, we suggest using a trusted spokesperson to communicate about those important consumer concerns like affordability to really connect and gain trust with Albertans. So these last couple slides show that public trust is very much hard to earn. It's a game of inches, I think, and it can be easily lost. So knowing this, our research wanted to provide our members with some forward-looking insights into what consumers feel is the next big thing, the next big threat to our food system. So we asked them in an open-ended format, in your opinion, what, if anything, is the greatest threat to Canada's food system and its ability to provide Canadians with the food they need? While a single issue didn't emerge among a majority of Albertans, we found that environmental issues, as well as government policies and politics, were the two main top-of-mind issues that Albertans feel to be threats to the effective functioning of our food system. Compared to Canadians overall, the threat policies may pose to the food system are felt to be significantly higher within Alberta, as well as inflation. Following the open-ended question, we provided respondents with a list of potential threats to Canada's food system, and you see the results here compared to the national average. So we see that inflation is ranked first by a majority, and it's significantly higher compared to the national score. Yet thinking back to the previous slide, inflation was ranked third, well behind the top two issues of environmental issues, as well as government policies and politics. So there is a bit of a gap there. So top of mind, people are thinking about environment and government, and then when they're provided with a list, we do see that inflation kind of ticks to the top. And yet climate change and environmental issues kind of remain in that top three, even on an aided basis. So that tells us that environment and climate change issues are definitely understood to be the next big threat in consumers' minds. So these results are meant to help shape a proactive response to these issues that are kind of simmering on the back burner of consumers' minds, while they're far more concerned about those core pocketbook issues of cost of living concerns we saw at the beginning of the presentation. Moving on, along with perceptions about specific food production issues, measuring trust, this year CCFI sought to understand what are the big picture food and farm issues important to Albertans, and how does that play out when they're deciding what types of food to buy? First, what are Albertans seeking out when they do engage with food-related information? In the past 6 months, nearly 6 in 10 say they sought out information about nutrition and healthy eating, while half were interested in how to spend less on food. Information on local food and food safety are secondary areas of interest to about 4 in 10 Albertans. Albertans seek out the same type of information as Canadians overall, as we found no significant differences between the provincial and national areas of interest. We also asked Albertans to rank the importance of the following food-related topics in order of importance to them personally. Again, we found that affordability, that core issue, it's the highest rated topic, and it's in fact significantly rated more important within Alberta than compared to Canadians overall. The safety of food that people consume was ranked second, but is quite a bit lower than affordability. Next, we asked Canadians and Albertans to allocate 100 points based on the level of importance placed on various factors pertaining specifically to food purchasing decisions. So this is kind of to force people to kind of put a pin on, you only have 100 points, how are you going to spend them at the grocery store? How are you going to allocate these? And to kind of solve for price, which we kind of knew would bubble to the top, and it did. So price is the top factor driving consumer purchases, followed by quality, nutritional value, and freshness. Results within Alberta are in line with the national scores, and it shows us that all Canadians want affordable, safe, healthy food, and that consumer messaging should be centered on those core issues. You'll see here that environmental impact is rated quite low, which does reinforce that greatest threat slides, that consumers know climate change and sustainability issues have the potential to disrupt the functioning of our food system, but this is an issue consumers are kind of offloading to the food and agriculture system while they're more concerned about the immediate attributes of cost, quality, and nutrition. Even a year ago, it was obvious to us that cost of food would be a crucial consumer issue in 2022, so we did field some additional questions related to this issue. We asked Albertans to select the attitudinal statement they most agreed with when it comes to why the cost of food is rising. And overall, we learned that Albertans and Canadians overall have a pretty strong understanding of the issues driving up the cost of food. Most believe that food prices are increasing due to costs associated with producing food and supply chain costs that are increasing. And that's at 57% within Alberta and 56% across Canada. 1 in 5 think the increase in food pricing is due to corporations wanting to increase their profits, while around 1 in 10 believe this increase is due to food shortages due to world conflict or the pandemic. Albertans in particular are significantly less likely to blame COVID-19 for the cost of food compared to Canadians overall. Digging down a bit deeper, we wanted to understand if any one thing or group was held more responsible for food price increases. So we asked on an unprompted, open-ended basis why Albertans think the cost of food is increasing, and inflation and supply shortages were the top 2 responses. Compared to the national average, Albertans are more likely to cite supply shortages, government policies and politics, and environmental issues as factors that are driving up the cost of food. Like that greatest threats question, we also asked about cost of food in 2 ways, both this open-ended top of mind format as well as a closed-ended kind of choose. So when provided a list of possible factors contributing to the cost of food, inflation remains the top mention. And again, it continues to be significantly higher within Alberta compared to Canadians overall. So inflation definitely front of mind within Alberta. While lower than the national score, cost of fuel is ranked second by half of Albertans. And this is a bit kind of an important gap between that top of mind and prompted understanding of cost of food. So the cost of fuel was ranked far lower on an open-ended basis. It was 6th. When presented this on kind of a list in front of someone, a majority agreed that fuel costs are impacting food costs. So this is a bit of a missing link in the Albertan consciousness. So when addressing rising cost of food, just be sure to highlight the impact of fuel costs and what that might be doing for the cost of food, because it might not be an obvious link among some Albertans' minds. So beyond who or what Albertans attribute the rising cost of food to, we do know that there's very real world implications to this issue and how consumers engage with the food system. So we asked people how, if at all, their habits were impacted by food costs. The most common response was eating out less. That's cited by about half of Albertans, which is significantly higher compared to the national average, which was 42%. Nearly 4 in 10 Albertans say they've reduced food waste in their home or simply are buying less food in general. Significantly fewer report shifts in the type of food they buy, including buying in bulk, eating less meat, and buying more frozen food. Going down, although only 7% say they use a food bank, which is likely an underestimate. We do also see a bit of an alarming difference here in that 1 in 5 say they've skipped meals in response to the cost of food, which is significantly higher than the national average. So in keeping with investigating habits beyond just perceptions and opinions, CCFI fielded a suite of questions related to food labeling and assurance logos. First, we developed just a simple baseline understanding of how believable the information on food is to consumers. Overall, Albertans are more skeptical than the average Canadian when it comes to how believable they find information on food to be. Only 1 in 5 feel this type of information is very believable compared to the quarter of Canadians overall who feel the same. Somewhat encouragingly, most fall within that somewhat believable category, with very few saying that they think the information on food is very unbelievable. From there, we asked what specific claims are most trusted or distrusted. We found that the more descriptive, objective claims to be most trusted, so that means ingredient list, country of origin, and nutritional information, are perceived to be the most believable, whereas organic, no artificial ingredients, all natural, and sustainable claims are less trusted, with about the same proportion or more reporting these labels to be very unbelievable. Along with measuring believability, we also developed a baseline incidence of consumers who seek out assurance logos when shopping. Once again, Albertans are unique here compared to the national average. Here, they're more likely to say that they seek out assurance logos when shopping, although still relatively low. 30% say they do so compared to a quarter of Canadians overall. Within Alberta, we see that the youngest cohort, so 18 to 34-year-olds, as well as those in the lower household income bracket, so under $40,000 a year, say that they seek out assurance logos when they're buying food. So when we ask what those assurance logo seekers look for when they're shopping, we see that half say that they're looking for non-GMO project verified logos. The Canadian organic logo and food allergen logos are ranked second and third, with just over a third saying that those were the logos that they seek out. In general, the proportion of Canadians overall versus Albertans are pretty similar in terms of the logos they seek out. Within Alberta, Albertans are less likely to look for fair trade, but this is rated pretty low on the list anyways. So moving on to another deep dive topic, plant and animal genetics and technology. First, what do Albertans know? Year over year, knowledge levels within the province have remained steady, with about half of respondents saying that they're at least somewhat knowledgeable about traditional animal breeding. About a third of Albertans report to be knowledgeable about traditional plant breeding and GMOs, while gene editing in both plants and animals are areas Albertans are least knowledgeable about. Compared to Canadians overall, the reported knowledge levels within the province are higher, significantly so when it comes to traditional animal and plant breeding. And just a note on, we didn't test them. This is stated knowledge. So I do acknowledge there is a gap in even the consumer habit questions between what people say they do or know and what they might actually do or know. So this is a grain of salt and just a reported level of knowledge on this. Moving on to how people feel about these technologies within the province, that elevated knowledge level when it comes to animal breeding has kind of trickled down into higher positive impressions of this technology compared to the national average. So we see 34% within Alberta feel positively compared to that 28% across Canada. Most Albertans feel neutrally towards all topics, but there are more that feel negatively than positively when it comes to plant and animal gene editing at the bottom there. In an effort to help with consumer acceptance of technology, we conducted some message testing related to gene editing in plants. So overall, statements that address those broad consumer concerns of food security and affordability, as well as sustainability and environmental issues, resonate the most. So with over half of Albertans and Canadians overall saying that this kind of information helps make them feel more positive about gene editing. So this top statement here, the statement that gene editing in plants can help farmers grow more and lower food costs, perform significantly better within Alberta than the national average. So that tells us that messaging related to efficiency and affordability, even if not specific to gene editing, are themes, those broad themes that will resonate well within the province. We'll wrap things up with a few slides on sustainability and a couple key findings. So first, we looked at how, if at all, consumers are making sustainability-informed purchasing decisions, especially given the overwhelming focus and consumer concern on cost of food. So we ask how often people do the following, and 2/3 of Albertans say they at least sometimes seek out food products that are the healthiest, even if they cost more, while 6 in 10 overlook price when it comes to buying locally produced food products. Over half of Albertans say they at least sometimes seek out grocery store items that use less packaging, while 4 in 10 will sometimes purchase something with a minimal environmental impact despite the cost. In terms of demographics within the province, women are more likely than men to seek out the healthiest option, while Albertans aged 55 plus are more likely than all other age groups to say they seek out local food options. The youngest cohort, 18 to 34-year-olds, on the other hand, are more likely than all other age groups to say that they seek out items that have a minimal environmental impact, even if they cost more. Looking at Alberta results compared to Canadians overall, we see that Albertans are less likely to say they overlook cost when it comes to local or sustainably produced or packaged food. So our organization at CCFI, we help the agri-food system earn trust, and we know that part of that trust, that sustainable trust, has to be environmentally, socially, economically, and societally sustainable. We need to keep it going if we're going to have anything to build trust with. So CCFI adapted the great work of the National Index on Agri-Food Performance, and we applied it to our public trust research. So the National Index is a growing coalition of private-public partners, and they're working pre-competitively to develop an integrated picture of sustainability for Canada's agri-food sector, from food production to retail. This is a group of more than 100 industry supporters, and they've worked to develop 4 pillars of sustainability, which you see on the left here. So we've got environment, economic, food integrity, and societal well-being. Among that group, they've developed a suite of 20 indicators, 50 sub-indicators, and over 100 metrics. We did not adapt those 100 metrics. Instead, we utilized the conceptual framework of sustainability here, those 4 pillars. And we did pull out some key indicators within each pillar. So protection of farmland, supporting local business, providing transparent nutritional information. So we wanted to use these metrics to help us understand the relationship with trust. So first, taking a step back, we asked Albertans to rate how much confidence do you have in Canada's food system to address each of the following to ensure the sustainability of our food system. So each of these little rectangles, we asked Albertans to provide their rating of confidence. And these are the areas that Albertans have the highest rated sustainability score for. So ensuring the safety of food, the well-being of farm animals, and protection of natural areas are the areas Albertans are most confident when it comes to the food system's response to. These remaining sustainability metrics are viewed less favorably, particularly those environmental areas at the end here of reducing food loss and waste and fighting climate change. Compared to Canadians overall, anything in red shows a significantly lower confidence level within Alberta. So that shows us that Albertans are significantly less confident in the food system's response to honest food labeling, providing good jobs, reducing packaging waste, ensuring access to nutritional food, producing affordable food, reducing food loss and waste, and fighting climate change. So these metrics, the national scores, were used as the independent variable for our key driver analysis. So what that means is we explored how improving confidence, improving these ratings here, might move the bar on public trust. And these are the results of the key driver analysis. So we found that food safety, providing transparent nutritional information, and the well-being of farm animals are the top 3 drivers of public trust. What that means is improving public perceptions on these areas will have the biggest impact on improving public trust overall. A 1-point improvement in food safety impressions will increase public trust by 0.42 points. Rather than getting too caught up in the numbers, generally these results can be used to provide directional insight into the areas of focus when seeking to most effectively build trust with Canadians. Along with this analysis, we wanted to use these results a bit more, so we did just a simple gap analysis of these findings. We compared how these issues ranked in terms of consumer confidence against how impactful they are on public trust. So there were a few key gaps identified between consumer confidence and the impact that they would have on public trust. So those star areas are the areas of focus. So investment in Canada's food system to innovate, responsible use of pesticides, and providing transparent nutritional information are public trust areas of improvement. That means that these are topics that consumers don't feel particularly confident about, yet improving perceptions about these areas will have a relatively strong impact on public trust. So these results suggest that kind of turning up the volume on the responsible use of pesticides and all your efforts related to innovation and transparency will help move the bar on public trust. So we'll wrap up with just a few key findings and then time for discussion. First, we see that Albertans are a little bit critical of government and regulation and policies. Albertans trust government less than the average Canadian. They're more likely to cite regulations as a threat to the food system. So we recommend leaning on those reasons for the right track, which is also government regulation. So there is a base there that understands that if we can demonstrate a commitment to continuous improvement and clearly linking how regulations are ensuring safe, affordable food for Albertans, that can help boost the perception there. Next, Albertans are far more likely to feel that farmers are good stewards of the environment than the average Canadian. But like the average Canadian, Albertans also understand that environmental issues are a great threat to the food system. So knowing this, we can leverage farmers as trusted spokespeople on that issue of sustainability. They're already seen as great stewards of the environment. So we definitely recommend I know farmers are very busy as it is, but as much as we can use their trusted position in terms of sustainability, it will be well received. And finally, just mind the gap. So that's referring to the gap analysis we just saw between consumer confidence and building public trust. So building consumer confidence in those three areas of innovation, responsible use of pesticides, and transparent nutritional information will have the biggest impact on public trust. I know that food and agriculture has always been innovating since the dawn of modern agriculture, but being told to be more innovative, I'm sure, can be frustrating. So we recommend using those effective messaging themes that we discussed earlier in the animal and plant genetics. So what are you doing to provide affordable food in an environmentally sustainable way? As much as you can kind of tie innovation to those key themes, that should help bring the consumer along in the technology and innovation acceptance journey. So that is all I have for today. Still room for a bit of discussion. And like I said, I'm always available. My email's here to chat research, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for the presentation. Wow, what a complex topic. And yeah, you're having lots of claps. Just
It's very data heavy. I do know, so